Hey everybody. So, fighting in the NHL is way, way down this year to less than one fight every 5 games, or less than a .20 fight per game rate. And fighting was way down last year, and now it's down again this year even more. It's virtually been almost non existent this season. Um, and there's a lot of blame to go around for that. You can blame the league, you can blame teams and management for getting rid of enforcers. You can blame the league for, making it a more speed and skill game and trying to get rid of the physicality. For whatever reason, there's a lot of blame to go around, and in some cases, the players deserve blame as well because the players are the ones who are choosing not to fight. Um, there are still plenty of guys left in the league who are willing to drop the gloves, and they're not doing it for whatever reason. So the players definitely aren't get blame free from the lack of fighting either. And if they wanted to fight, I think they could a lot more. And that's what this list is going to show. These are 10 players who have yet to have a fight this year. But they're all tough guys, and they're all guys that you would expect to be fairly frequent fighters, or at least in the past have been fairly frequent fighters. And for whatever reason, whether it's injury, whether it's coaching, for whatever reason, they just don't drop the gloves as much anymore. And for these guys, they have yet to drop the gloves at all this season. So these are 10 players in the NHL that do not yet have a fight, that it's surprising that they haven't fought yet. First up, Wayne Simmonds in Philadelphia. Philly is off to a pretty lousy start this year, and I thought for sure Wayne Simmonds would be a guy who would drop his gloves, get in a scrap, and try and get his team into it. And for whatever reason, health has been an issue with Simmonds for the last year, or couple of years really. So that definitely may have played a role in it. But for whatever reason, Simmonds has not been nearly as physical the last I would say 2 or 3 years than that he was in the stretch before that. Something has happened where he has toned back physically a lot, and I think that kind of sucks because Simmonds was one of my favorite players in the league. Back in the early 2010s when he was throwing huge hits, fighting pretty regularly, also scoring 30 goals every year. He was one of my favorite players. He is really toned back physically. He does not fight nearly as much as he used to. He doesn't really even play all that physical anymore, not noticeably physical the way that he did before. So Simmonds, something's happened. I think a lot of it's health related. He's had injury problems, but something's happened with Simmonds the last few years, and he is not nearly the same powerful physical player that he was the years before that. And he has no fights yet this year. Derek Englund. Derek Englund came into this league basically as an enforcer on the back end. He was a heavyweight fighter for Pittsburgh when he came into this league, and he was always a guy who would fight the toughest of the tough, and he'd take on anyone, and he fought quite a bit. Last year, he had 0 fights in the regular season last year after having 9 the year before. And this year, he once again has 0 fights, and I don't know why Derek Englund has stopped fighting, but he just doesn't scrap anymore apparently, and he hasn't at all this season. So Derek Englund, even though he's one of the toughest guys in the league and one of the last real tough guys left in the league, he doesn't fight anymore. Matt Martin finally gets to play. He returns to New York where he's loved. He was not really Toronto was not the place for Matt Martin, and go back to New York, I thought he was going to really take advantage of that, and he's scored 3 goals already. He's been a regular in the lineup. He's had a good year, but no fights yet for Matt Martin, and I thought for sure he would be a guy that would want to go on opening night. Like, you're back in a place that loves you, you're back in familiar territory, you're back literally playing with the same players that you were playing with before you left New York on one of the best fourth lines in the league. I thought he'd be like trying to get back into it immediately, opening night, find somebody and fight, and get right back into things this season. No fights yet from Matt Martin, so for whatever reason he hasn't scrapped yet. Antoine Roussel, one of the biggest pests left in the NHL. Another guy who's really toned his game down over the last couple of seasons. Really, I don't know the reasoning behind that. I don't know why. I think he's at his best when he's a complete shit stirrer, and he can also add a little bit offensively. He didn't fight all that much last year, and he has not fought yet this season. I know this season he had a concussion in the preseason, so that definitely probably has something to do with it. But he's been back for a few weeks now, so I would think he'd be good to go if he was going to drop the gloves. But for whatever reason, Roussel has not gotten into any sort of altercation yet this season. Milan Lucic in Edmonton. Lucic, no fights yet this year. And Lucic is a guy who he used to fight a lot. He was good for 8, 10, even 12 fights a season. The last, I'd say 5 years or so, he's fought a lot less. You're looking at 5 or 6 fights a season. But he's a guy who usually likes to fight early in the season at least once. Like first week. You're like, I'm used to seeing Milan Lucic's name on the fight chart at some point in Edmonton's first couple of games. And he hasn't done that this year. For whatever reason, he's kept the gloves on. Maybe he hasn't found a dance partner. I don't know. There's not many guys left who are probably even willing to fight someone like Lucic. But no fights yet for Lucic, and I'm definitely surprised by that because he usually likes to scrap early in the season. Luke Witkowski in Detroit. Now, Witkowski's only played 4 games, so he's had a very limited number of chances to fight. But he's a guy who literally is there to fight. Like, that's what he brings to the table. He's not going to give you anything offensively. He's there to fight. So I'm surprised he even played a game this year without getting into a scrap. And Detroit's not an overly tough team, so when he's in the lineup, he's the guy you look at to drop the gloves. And other guys on Detroit have fought this year, but Witkowski's not one of them. So I'm a little surprised that even, I thought even giving him one game, that would be he'd fight in that game, and that hasn't been the case. Adam McQuaid, New York Rangers. McQuaid came over to New York from Boston. He's one of the toughest guys left in the NHL. He will fight absolutely anybody, and he can beat pretty much anybody. He's a great fighter, but in the first month this year, he's played 8 games. No fights for him in a Rangers uniform yet. So McQuaid, I'm definitely surprised that he hasn't gotten in one early. But for gloves stayed on for Adam so far this year. Ross Johnston, another New York Islander. Johnston has not played all that much. He's only gotten into a few games. But much like Luke Witkowski, he's somebody who, when he's in the lineup, he is there to fight, and that's it. He doesn't really do anything else. And, getting Matt Martin back, definitely. Martin has basically taken Johnston's spot in the lineup on that 4th-line wing, and Martin's played most of the games, but Johnston's got into a few games, and again, like Witkowski with Johnston, I thought just getting in one game that he's going to fight in that game, because that's what he's there to do. He just signed a 4-year deal with the Islanders. He's a guy who fought a ton in the AHL. He fought, in the limited number of games he played up in New York last year, he fought quite a bit. But for whatever reason, in the first month of this season, Johnston has not yet dropped the gloves. So another surprise, no fights. Garnet Hathaway in Calgary. Hathaway for the last year was near the top of the league in fighting majors, and he's certainly one of Calgary's toughest players. And with Michael Ferland gone to Carolina, he's really the one of the most likely fighters left for Calgary. But he hasn't fought yet this year. He actually only has, I think, 4 penalty minutes on the season, so he hasn't been all that physical. And he's playing a lot, so for whatever reason, Hathaway has yet to drop the gloves and really hasn't brought that physical game yet this year. And lastly, JT Brown. JT Brown, when he was in Tampa Bay, he was very willing to fight. He played on that fourth line, and he got in a decent number of scraps. And he went on to Anaheim last year. I think he had four fights last year. Going to Minnesota, I thought Minnesota's got a decently tough lineup for the modern NHL. They've got Brown, they've got Matt Hendricks, they've got Marcus Foligno all up front, they've got Nick Seeler on the back end, they've got Greg Patterin on the back end. They've got like five guys who can drop the gloves in Minnesota. Brown hasn't fought yet this year, and Minnesota hasn't had that many fights this year. Hendricks has one. Foligno has. I'm not sure if Foligno's even fought yet. He might not have either. I know Sealer has one, but they're not fighting all that much. And JT Brown, I'm a little surprised. I thought going to a new team, generally you try and get in it early. One of the first few games, you get the gloves dropped and endear yourself to your teammates. Show the fans that that's the kind of player you are, that you're going to bring toughness and grit to the team. And Brown has not fought yet. So these are 10 guys who have 0 fights this season, and I'm surprised by it, because I thought they're generally tough players and guys who are more than willing to drop the gloves. But for whatever reason, these guys have yet to fight. So that certainly plays a role in why fighting is so far down this year. Guys who normally fight aren't fighting. So that, I think, has a lot to do with it. That's all I've got on that. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. Check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support Off the Wall Hockey, our link to our Patreon page is also down in the description. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.